Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. David Bozell joining us from For America. David, Christmas is over, New Year's is over, but the controversies continue. We're getting ready for impeachment hearings. Adam Schiff, I don't know where we should begin, but how did you survive the holidays?
Bourbon, vanilla ice cream, more bourbon,
Right.
Surrounded by my children for just little bits at a time before I returned back to my bourbon.
I'm sure they appreciated that.
They were off playing. They were off playing with Santa's new presents. So Santa was good to them because they've been good to me. We all have angels, right?
We do, yeah.
That's right.
Well, I don't know if we have any angels on Capitol Hill. Let's go to at foramerica.org. You do a lot of research for people that aren't familiar with your platform, your publication. Can you I'm always talking about it. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was playing the clip of Nancy Pelosi going, "You don't have the votes," and blah 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 blah, and the president did in the House. But what is your platform? Tell us a little bit about it, sir.
Well, we started in 2010. Folks will know my father, Brent, red hair, red beard. He's on Fox all the time, talking about media bias. But in 2010, we looked across the landscape, and there really was not a robust social media operation for conservatives. And Obama had basically used, at this particular time, Facebook to basically mollywop us to next week. And so we just looked across the landscape. We said, we've got to create this. We see if we can recruit conservatives on Facebook, which it still is, the biggest communications platform in the world. And I remember Facebook told us when we started that in their estimation, there was only about, this is 2010, and they had a United States user base of about 43 million people, I think, at that particular time. Facebook thought that they only had 800,000 conservatives nationwide. That was it on their platform. And we just kind of looked at the demographics like, I don't think so. We kind of made a bet that they were conservatives who just wanted to be introduced to other conservatives online. So we got some seed money to recruit the first 300,000. We figured that we got that in like 2 weeks. Then we were at 1 million within the first 6 months. And the idea is to try to make conservatism go viral. We've got some of the biggest posts and the biggest issues on the biggest platform. We've knocked down Boehner's door with just deluge of phone calls. We just put in about 9,000 phone calls into the White House, encouraging the president in his shutdown fight over the wall. So we're just super proud of the activism that we've been able to generate. I know Facebook has a little bit of a black eye right now, but I still believe in it in terms of it's still the biggest dog on the block, and we've got to be preaching our values, our values and our principles on the biggest communication platforms in the world. We just can't stop doing that. So we've got close to 9 million fans, followers, subscribers across all manner of different social media platforms, and some of the most viral stuff in the movement. So we're super proud of it.
Well, how do you get past Facebook? We had a buddy of mine had Robert Spencer on from Jihad Watch. He put it on Facebook, and all of a sudden, boom, Mr. Spencer's post was taken down. The radio's website Facebook post was taken down and said, "Shame, shame, know your name. Don't put it up again."
I do hesitate to comment on individual situations because you just don't know.
But I mean, in general, and let me retract the question then. In general, is there a secret sauce to being Facebook friendly? We've had people that have railed against it. You make a great point that hey, it's out there, it's not going away. We should take advantage of it.
Well, it's you do have to play in their sandbox in accordance with the rules of their sandbox to a certain extent. I mean, it is free after all. So to the extent that you want to participate in it, especially if you want to create a large group of people, you can get frustrated all you want, but you are sort of getting what you're paying for, which is nothing. because it is free. So they have certain rules and regulations in terms of we'll keep the speech content part of it off to the side for a second. We'll get to it, but they have certain rules and regs in terms of the size of an image, copyright infringement, how many letters you can put into an image, the videos that you post. A lot of this does come down to copyright. So they do, and then for a while, they had these fact checkers that really made life difficult for conservatives. I think conservatives have done a pretty good job shining the light back on them. But the fact of the matter is that they are the staff, the board, everyone involved in the Facebook universe is overwhelmingly left-wing. They do not see the world like we do. But like you said, the platform is not going away. It is for the politically agnostic, for the quote independents, for women. Let's just isolate women for a second. Every election is the year of the woman. That's what all the political people will tell you, and they're right. It does generally come down, whether it's district, state, or national, it does come down to how females will vote. 9 out of every 10 self-identified soccer moms go on Facebook every single day. So Marketing 101 should tell us conservatives, go to where they're at. We can put a blog up, we can write a white paper, we can do all these wonderful things, but unless you're going to the platforms that they're in, your chances are your ability to reach them goes down significantly. So I know Facebook can be a pain. I know they've throttled people back. I'm not a huge fan. I understand the sale, Kevin, of maybe potentially creating new platforms. I get the intrigue, and I know it's inviting. I'm not really a fan of taking the evangelists that we need in these fights and taking them off of these platforms and putting them into another box all by themselves. I think that could be dangerous for conservatism at large. I mean, we've got significant fights, and not just policy, but the influencers that we're up against. I mean, people will laugh at this, but you don't understand how influential like a LeBron James really is in the cultural space, even in the political space. We make fun of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because she says dumb things, but her influencer reach is in the tens of millions of people. You got to take this stuff seriously, and you got to try to create that energy, that buzz for conservatives, whether Us at For America or Kevin Miller or your talk show host and influencer, whatever your issue du jour, you got to create that energy on social media, or you really do risk not being very relevant in the discussion, in the political discussions today.
Our friend David Bozell with a great lesson, ForAmerica.org. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. So let's continue on in this platform-centered world that you have brought conservatism in. Most of us, David, with a little miles on the odometer, were analog guys. I can remember, hearing about your father's group many, many years. I still joke with Dan Gaynor and Tim Graham about the VHS tapes and everything else.
Right. Still have those, by the
way. Right. And, again, there'll be classic hits one day. But we go to a LeBron James or an Ariana Grande. Is there a secret sauce that we're missing? Or, how do we make conservatism mainstream? Or is it always going to be at a disadvantage concerning social media because you have a lot of libs there?
I don't think you're always going to be at a disadvantage because of the quantity of liberals. You have to do it in a creative way. You got to tie pop culture to the news of the day. You have to take have variety in your approach, blogs, images, I mean, Shapiro does a very good job of this. He's got podcasts, he's got images, he's got videos, he's got all this stuff. There's a reason why he's sort of taking off in terms of media influencer, because he has a diversification of his approach. And he's a really creative guy. But I think we've got to be funnier. We have a credo here in the office. It's make the sharer look good. Why do you send something to your network? Why do you email something that you think is funny? You may not realize it, but really at the heart of it, it's going to make you look good to the audience that you're sending it to. And so that's what we try to do in our approach. We try to produce content or aggregate content that's going to make you, the sharer, look good. And so I think if conservatives took that approach more often, and we also need to be more, more in sync in terms of being on schedule, helping amplifying each other, being on the same page. I mean, the players, Kevin. There's a lot of folks out there, a lot of groups in the conservative movement that are single issue, and they won't touch anything else. I know a lot of econ groups that won't dip their toes into the immigration waters because that's not their issue. Well, those of us who care about the wall could really use their help and their influence right now. I know folks who are single issue about Second Amendment, and they don't touch anything else. But they've got tremendous influencer networks that other organizations, not so much. I don't want to sort of milk off of a bigger organization, but other issues could stand to benefit from folks with large organizations. Hollywood left doesn't see any of this. Everything is fair game. They don't do it this way. The way we do it, everything is fair game. Everything is march to the same drummer. Whether it's climate change, abortion policy, marriage, any of these cultural issues, all of them are all in. All of them are all in. All the time. So our side just doesn't do that terrific of a job of replicating that. That would be my critique.
We appreciate the leadership of David Bozell. Maybe he could be our leader. Anyway, ForAmerica.org. More coming up. Kevin Miller with you here. 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Remember, anything that you hear or you miss, you can always go to our website, KIDOTalkRadio.com, for our podcast. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And back again with David Bozell, ForAmerica.org, on KIDO Talk Radio. I get so enamored with you that I forget where I'm at. I'm supposed to remind people, radio station, radio station, radio station. So we're getting ready for the new Congress. You've got Adam Schiff, who was unknown a few years ago, now the kingmaker. As someone who continues to study the media, and you were born into holding the media accountable, what do you make of, earlier we were talking about Facebook and, the libs there, but I mean, you take a look at Meet the Press, or what was it, just the other day, you had a reporter a couple weeks ago on it was on NBC saying the president's temper tantrum, and you're thinking, I don't think that that's out of the AP style book.
Right. Well, a guy like Schiff is going to be a star in 2019. If you've grown tired of him, I hate to tell you, you're going to see a lot more of him. He is going to be the go-to source for a lot of media outlets. If and when and I do believe they're going to go through with this, with an impeachment. If and when they do, the impeachment managers, I remember during Clinton's impeachment, those that manage the impeachment, those members that manage the impeachment, they're about a dozen on each side. Those will really be, you'll know, those will be kitchen table names for everybody. Those will be sort of the media darlings. I don't know who they're going to be on the Republican side. I mean, I know there's already a lot of jockeying because smart politicians understand that that's going to be where the cameras go. So there's a lot of jockeying, even among Republicans, to be part of the member managers team in the House. So he's going to be a star, and the press is look, Schiff has proven time and again, and the president has pointed this out time and again. Very few others. Well, I guess Nunez has. I'll correct myself. But Schiff has been just a vicious leaker of these closed-door hearings for the better part of the last 2 years. He's very good at crafting his narrative, and obviously he has a willing and sycophantic media, ready to help him out. So that's just the challenge that the president and his White House has in front of them. I hope they're up for it. I think some of them are. I'll hesitate to suggest that they absolutely are. I think he is. I hope he looks at this as, there are bigger sharks in New York City real estate than this. He gives himself some confidence because his life will be under an intense microscope. But I always remember what, I think it was Axios, Kevin, that reported this. I thought it was the best line that kind of symbolized Trump, which was somebody walked out of a meeting with him early on in the administration. They said he has no aversion to awkwardness. And I just thought that crystallized everything about this president. Just nothing really. Sure, something may make him mad. He might or laugh, whatever. But nothing. There's no awkwardness in any sort of social dealings. It's just an incredible. Maybe you want to consider a skill. I don't know, but I don't think he's going to feel. He's not going to. It's not going to. The word I want to use here. He's not going to feel threatened or feel awkward about having Democrats look into his personal life. He doesn't seem to be feeling awkward about anything to date. So I don't know why he would going forward, but it's going to be a challenge. It's going to distract him. There's not going to be much done on the legislative front, and the 2020 race is already on. It's already underway.
And we'll get to that in a minute, but back to the usual suspects where you've had folks urging the Democrats to start impeaching the president even before they take power. And what does that say about the role of the media?
Well, I think
bad or
other
up?
than the obvious, they would love to see it happen. I'm not telling your audience something they don't already know. They've wanted to take him down since the very beginning. Every reporter in town wants to be the reporter that has the story that eventually that takes him down finally. So there are thousands of them, thousands of reporters, and thousands of angles. And to kind of to bring it back to a little bit about Facebook for a second. The reason why the press talks so bad about Facebook in relation to, quote, so-called Russian collusion, close quote, is that they cannot grapple with or do not want to admit their culpability in getting Donald Trump elected. $3.5 billion in free media coverage during the 2016 race. That's how much free media that the liberal press provided him. He loved it. He knew it. He knew how to manipulate it and get more of it. And they loved him. Ratings are great. So it's all Trump all the time. But the reason why they keep blaming Facebook and Russian posts and those types of things is because they don't really want to admit that, to a large extent, they're the ones that got him into the seats. They're the ones that put him there. And now they want to be the ones that take him out. So there's thousands of reporters jockeying, covering thousands of different angles, and it's just going to be an incredibly intense. The White House. I know some folks over there. I don't think they're nervous though. I think they've they've kind of clawed back a little bit in terms of their exposure. You won't see a lot of folks out there in terms of digital communications because all that stuff can get subpoenaed. But I think the effort, and to the extent that they can get his agenda through a divided Congress, I think the effort from the White House is still going to be there.
Right. Have we seen anything like this? I mean, you and I, we have some miles on the odometer, but, you know, people compare everything to Watergate or Iran-Contra. I don't know. I mean, the media is a lot more influential than it was back then.
It's certainly different because it's just so much more intense, and things. I mean, I remember on the day of the government potentially shutting down, within a 24-hour cycle, you had all manner of different stories that would have easily have led the network news all by themselves. We had the shutdown fight. You had Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the hospital. You had James Mattis resigning. You had all of these different news events, you know, just kind of converging into one. So I think that's really where it's become different, is that everyone within the Washington, D.C. political apparatus understands now that because of these social media tools, because of the communications outlets available, anyone can be a newsmaker. And there are plenty of Washington folks that aim to be newsmakers day in and day out and are being quite successful doing it. So it's just, I think to answer your question, it's just more intense. There's more stories. News there's news, and then there's the coverage of the bias as well. That's also the news. So there's that. You know, I credit my father in that regard for jump-starting that industry. I mean, the critique of the news about how they cover the news is a story unto itself every single day. So it's just become more tense, and you know, those of us with miles, you know, probably, you know, I feel like me. I kind of crawl under my desk. It's just like turn everything off for a few minutes.
Right.
You know, pull out this thing that, you know, the kids used to call a magazine, and maybe just, or a newspaper, and get that soot, the ink on your fingers. But
more coming up with David Bozell. Kevin Miller in the morning. By the way, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. You can reach David at foramerica.org. Coming up next, we're going to talk about, well, what we can expect in the next new year with possibly our troops leaving Afghanistan and more fallout from the president's foreign policy. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. Kevin Miller in the morning, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. David Bozell joining us from foramerica.org. So the president shocked everybody. We've got Bob Corker running wild, and people in Idaho don't know who Bob Corker is. Probably people in Tennessee don't know who Chattanooga, former mayor of Chattanooga, Bob Corker is. However, you know, people are going crazy and have been over the president tweeting, "I'm out of Syria." What do you make of that? Do you think that was the right move that he made a few weeks ago?
I hope it was. I tend not to want to be super critical of the commander-in-chief when he makes the decisions to get in or get out. I just don't think that is really beneficial to anyone, especially for the folks that are, you know, responsible for undertaking his orders. Here's what I think about doing it via tweet. I think it spooked General Mattis. That's not something that I think he wanted to be a part of going forward. I think his resignation letter was probably written largely in advance, so it's not like he saw the president tweet and then wrote this 2-page letter eviscerating the president. And it was a tough letter. I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it. That was a tough read. But I think the president looked across the landscape. So someone mentioned this on Twitter, and I wish I could cite him and give him the proper credit, but I totally agree. Their suspicion was that the president perhaps got spooked by that New York Times op-ed that was published over the fall. about someone within the White House that was close to the president, and that was, aiming to, quote, save the country from the president. And it was this anonymous op-ed, if you remember, that was written in the New York Times. Why the New York Times took an anonymous op-ed, I'll never know. But that answers your earlier question about the role of the media in this regard. Anything they can do to derail him and get rid of him, they'll do. And they did it in that case. And I think it spooked the president in the sense that, let's say he wakes up, he says, I think we've accomplished all that we want to accomplish in Syria. I don't think we can make, and I'm just sort of speculating. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's just a thought process. And I'm getting updates on Syria, and doesn't seem to be any real forward movement to be made, and I don't see where we would want to make any forward movement. So let's get out. I made a promise to the voters: if you elect me, I'm not going to stay in these prolonged entanglements. And so he makes the decision internally with himself that he wants to get out of Syria. Now he knows that there are people who are willing to go to the New York Times and say that they're actively working against him. But he doesn't necessarily know who that person is. So he looks across his White House and says, I can't. What if I ask my team what they think, there's a good chance that there's someone in here who's going to try to talk me out of it and do everything they can involving the deep state to stop me from getting out of Syria. And I will never get out. And then the country suffers. The military-industrial complex is quite influential in Washington, D.C., no doubt about it. So I think he takes a little bit of a risk in announcing it over Twitter. But with anything that the president does, I want to announce it over Twitter. I'm going to see where the fault lines are. I'm going to see who's with me, who's against me. And I'm going to arrive at the spot that I wanted to be in, which was getting the troops out of Syria. I do think, that I think he's correct in that he ran on a policy of not being the world's policeman, and he basically said as much when he announced the intervention in Syria. We ain't staying there very long, folks, so I'll get used to this. And I guess we were only in there for just over a year. So, but I think that's gonna be appreciated by the voters, come 2020. And I think Afghanistan is probably next too.
Well, and there has been some allusion to that. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Multiple Daves there. We have Dave with the traffic, David Bozell. It's rather confusing here.
I don't have the traffic read in front of me.
Well, exactly. When you're a Kevin, you pretty much, you used to stand out. We used to, Kevin used to be an unusual name. Now it's almost as common as David. But David Bozell joining us, ForAmerica.org, trying to segue back to something relevant. You made a great statement to us at the beginning of this segment here when you said, I'm not going to criticize the commander-in-chief, but, going back to the reaction of the tweet to get out of Syria, I don't think I've ever seen the media openly revolting, and you've got the married couple in the morning on MSNBC saying the Mattis letter was equivalent to just going right to the brink of calling the president a traitor and aiding and abetting enemies. That does have an impact on people. And Casey Hunt, who used to be a Politico and now a big budding rising star, 20-something at MSNBC that knows everything, she was the one saying he's got the Trump temper tantrum, and I'm going, this is not journalism. So can we decipher a lot of this where we have the media openly critical of the president? That's got to impact how our allies view us.
Think about how this stuff evolves. The Trump temper tantrum. Where did you first hear that? If you remember, Schumer. After the Oval Office thing. That's where the lingo temper tantrum really kind of started to take off. Then you've got folks like Casey Hunt who just use that, not in their reporting that that's what Schumer said, so I'm sure she did as well. But it's just in her sort of reporting / opinion of what it was, and it's just there's a big difference. It's much like almost like Clinton impeachment, where it was the Clinton operation was saying, "Oh, come on, it's just sex. Let's just move on." Then the reporting became, the reporting was, evolved into, why can't these just old Scrooge Republicans just realize it's just about sex and just move on? Hence, and then MoveOn.org was born from that tagline. That's how powerful these things can be, and that's how in sync the left and the media can be. And to a large extent, it is coordinated. But I just especially when you have folks like when you look at the media's coverage of the Syria announcement, I mean, it's almost like they destroyed Bush for staying in Iraq, and now they want to destroy Trump for getting out of Syria, all because they have an R next to their name, and they know who the willing participants, even on, with R's next to their name, will be: the Lindsey Grahams, the Bob Corkers, the Ben Sasses, the Jeff Flakes. Even though those guys, a couple of those guys are no longer, here, thank God, off doing other things. But those are that group of Republicans that don't know what to do with their time other than to look for the biggest bank of cameras they can find. Especially Graham. Just spends all day long going from one bank of cameras to the next to do interviews. This interview, he's praising the president. The next one, he wants to destroy him. So it's just these guys are just looking for attention, and the press who are out to get Trump and out to destroy him, whether they agree with the policy or not, they'll just say it's terrible because you've got some folks in the left policymaking community that will say it's terrible, and unfortunately, you have folks in the Republican establishment who will also say it's terrible, and that's what typically will lead their coverage, and that's why you turn on the news, CNNs, the MSNBCs, and you think, wow, if these guys just think everything is terrible. It's just, and you just, unless you're interested in watching a train wreck, I think that's why you see half the country turning these guys out.
All right. Much more coming up with David Boesel. We promise we're going to get to Afghanistan, the budget, and everything else. And, you just go back to the media. Remember, you can reach David anytime, foramerica.org. That's foramerica.org. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. That's 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. And here we go, our final segment with David Boesel, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, David, we come back to, 2020. I don't know if you at foramerica.org have started looking at the usual suspects. People are talking about maybe 20 or, I can't believe this number, even 30 people running on the Democratic side.
Yeah. Crazy. And 12 debates. Which, that'll give a lot of folks some opportunities that are not known. There's a Hawaiian congressman. I was just telling the team. No, there's a Hawaiian congressman. I forget her name. Gabbert.
Something like that. A war veteran.
Yeah, war veteran. Very well spoken for her worldview. I think she's going to be a little bit of a dark horse in terms of the Democrat nomination. But one of those, she's got policy chops and surfer, very good looking. I think she's going to have a very good story to tell. You're going to see some folks that are probably too soon. The Ocasio-Cortezes, maybe even the Betos. Who would think, oh, well, if Barack Obama can be a first-termer and win, then so can and I can do the same thing. I think Obama was a little bit of was the exception rather than the rule. But you're going to have that group. I think you will have Joe Biden. I think you will have Hillary Clinton. I think it would be too tempting. And they have, think about it the other way, they have nothing else to do with their lives. They just don't. Government, and you see it, you saw it with the shutdown. Government is so precious to these guys. They'll never want to give it up. Working for it, working, just to fund it, anything associated with it. So I think you'll see the old guard, some fresh faces, some new faces that you still don't even know too much about. There's going to be 12 debates for the Democrats that's going to flush out the field. I think they will pick someone that will be radical. I don't think they'll go the celebrity route, though I suspect there would be one or two of those to jump into the pool. But I don't think they'll go to the celebrity route. They'll want to pick someone who has experience in government. So I think Beto is going to be right there, but he'll probably be kind of vice presidential material. I think that's probably what he's running for. And I think you'll probably see a woman, a minority woman.
At the top of the ticket?
Yeah, I do.
Wow, that seems like, I'm trying to think, Harris?
Yeah, Harris would be one. You just cannot. Look, I know we kind of goofed. I was saying earlier we were goofing on Alexandria Cortez, and I get it.
I don't think she's old enough, though.
Silly things, but
she's like 30.
She has an influence. Yeah, she's not even eligible, but though she wants to sort of sue and figure that one out. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but it's that kind of. It's the only one who really the left really dominates the news because they want to dominate the platforms that make news, and the left just does a much better job. Contrast how much you hear from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez versus how much you hear from Kevin McCarthy. I mean, you barely even hear from the guy. I mean, unless you watch Fox all day, every day, and are plugged into Lou Dobbs, you just never hear from the guy. He doesn't say anything remotely controversial. He's not very good on social feeds. He's frankly not a very good speaker. Not to be too disparaging of him, but he doesn't know how to use these tools. And versus the left, who've got dozens of people that are using these tools and creating stars out of themselves, and becoming brands. And the press are on these platforms with them. And so that's a real. And then we've got one guy is the president. Thank God, trying to fight back against this tidal wave. So it's really incumbent upon if you're into these platforms, you're on these tools. You got to help him out. You got to amplify him. He pays attention. If you disagree with something, I tell people all the time, if you disagree with something he says on Twitter, tell him. His team pays attention to this stuff. It's not like a sand pebble into an ocean. Don't look at it that way. The reason why he doesn't pick a fight with the Freedom Caucus, he tried to in 2017 on the first healthcare bill, and his audience said, "Hey, listen, look, Mr. President, like we voted for you, we want you to win, but we've been in the trenches with these guys. We've been through the fights with the Freedom Caucus, with the Mark Meadows and Jim Jordans, and these guys. These guys are not your enemy." He saw all that. He saw the pushback. Why you don't see him? It's why you see him and Mark Meadows best buds. And so it can prove beneficial to engage on his platform directly, but it's also incumbent upon conservatives in the activist community to help him out in this space, and then also develop your own brand as well.
More coming up. David Bozell joining us now. David, we're going to Dave in traffic. That's not you, just FYI.
Okay.
All right, stand by. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And thank you, Larry. Here we are once again. David Bozell, Kevin Miller in the morning, foramerica.org. So you really think, though, people in Idaho, we're far removed from from you folks east of the Great River. What you do on social media matters.
Do I think it matters? I hope it does.
Well, I'm talking about for us here. You say to be engaged. You really think that makes a difference?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't win. He does not win the presidency of the United States without his mastery of social media, and he doesn't win without the audience that he's compiled. Now, I understand the demographics where, the Twitter usage in Boise is going to be smaller percentage wise than the Twitter usage in Atlanta. I get it, okay, but it's these are the Facebook, Twitter. These are the battlegrounds of ideas. This is where policy is being sold to the country, is through these platforms. If you're Nancy Pelosi and you want to do something on policy, you're going to sell it on social media to try to galvanize your base. Republicans don't do that very well, but they should, and they need to. But ask President Obama how important Facebook was for him. He's not president without it. Ask the President Trump how important Facebook was for him. He's not president without it. You don't get to hear his direct message without these platforms. So absolutely engage in them. Absolutely. Don't be shy about it. There was in our infancy For America, we always noticed that people were shy about talking about social issues. I think people have become more bullish about it now. But, abortion, gay marriage, people just they didn't want to have their name associated with that stuff because it was uncomfortable. For the left, they're all in on social issues. Nothing's uncomfortable. No issue is untouchable. That's why they're always advancing, in these fights. So it's really, I encourage anyone and everyone, don't be shy about using these platforms. Don't be shy about being vocal, about telling your representatives, the president, how you think and feel. His people, and I know, folks, communication directors on Capitol Hill, they pay attention to this stuff.
David Roselle, we appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Hey, anytime, Kevin. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas and had a great New Year, and it'll be fun 2019.
You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.